Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about why mixed voice is so hard to find, because all my students and all these people that are hitting me up now consistently asking about mixed voice and stuff are having troubles and always have been having troubles, and I want to explain why that is and hopefully a little bit of information how to overcome these and maybe a couple applications to try to get over these things as well. But if you're interested in that, if you're having troubles, come join me and we'll have a chat about it. All right, mixed voice, of course, as you already know, is a blending of the chest and the head voice. So it's this kind of back and forth thing. If I were to give you an example, it's the blending so that we can move over our bridge and not have this discernible kind of thing. It's morning. You can tell my voice is a little bit groggier this morning. But if I go over my bridge here, my bridge happens to be at F4, F sharp 4. So there, I'm blending the two together, and you can't really tell that there's a bridge. Or maybe you could a little bit, but you know what I'm saying. We're finding a way to pass over these things and to blend them together when we're singing so that we're not jumping from one to the other, which tends to be the sound that people don't want. Don't stop believing! You don't want to have to go to straight up head voice or some version of shouty, mixed, compressed head voice. Anyway, if you're singing something like that, and there's people that do, that's not good. Anyway, now we want to talk about why these things are hard to find and try to make some sense of this. First of all, like I mentioned, if you're somebody that wants to study with me, you're somebody that wants to hit me up about lessons, you can write to me, sterlingravijackson@gmail.com. I'm happy to take on more students. I'm teaching people from all over the world all the time. But when it comes to this mixed voice stuff, this is what people are hitting up me most about. And I understand that. And I had somebody reference recently like, oh, they're hitting you up because mixed voice is kind of like the Cadillac of singing. And it's like, I never really thought about it that way, but I understand how people kind of lust after it, thinking it's this really intangible thing like they can't get to, and if they could, they'll be a great singer, and that's obviously not the case. It's only going to perfect and help some of the higher range stuff, but it's not necessarily going to make you a better singer or anything. Like if you have a shitty chest voice range and you can't really sing very well there, then mixed voice isn't really going to help you. It's definitely not going to help you sound better. So anyway, talking about why it's so hard to find. This is all just off the cuff and just from, intuitively trying to relay this information. But first of all, we have your instinct. We have your muscular instinct, especially when it comes to singing live. That instinct that you have built in, and we all have it, is that when notes get higher, they get like more raw and exciting and, stretched and compressed, and they should sound more badass. And when you start learning mix, that is absolutely not the case. It is absolutely the opposite of that. And when people hear that, when people try to understand that, when people try to wrap their head around that, it's very frustrating. It's very counterintuitive. And then people just get pissed off and they're like, whatever. And then they go to another video or whatnot. So first of all, out of the gate, recognize that your voice, when you learn how to do mixed, is not going to get louder. It's going to get quieter. It's not going to get more badass. Your high notes are going to get worse, meaning that what you thought was powerful in your voice, and maybe there is some version of quote-unquote power in your voice in your upper range, you're like getting higher in your chest, that is going to go away and be replaced by a small, weirder sound that you will not feel confident in. And you will not take that sound and that version of what you're doing right to the stage and be like, I got this. I will also let you know as well that you're going to keep hearing people like myself talking about these things and making these sounds, and then you're going to keep throwing yourself up against them and not finding them, or maybe finding versions of them, and then just getting frustrated and be like, oh, he can do it, but I can't, or his voice is different than mine, or she's different than mine. And it's just this ongoing battle between really having perseverance and ambition and knowing, okay, this person's doing something different with their voice. I know I can get there. I know I can figure this out. What is it? And trying over the course of weeks, months. Yeah, if you've been trying for years, pretty consistently, then of course try to work with a coach of some type and see what's going on, and maybe they can help you. But there's also not that many good coaches. I have constant horror stories about people that just don't know how to teach well. So that's a shame as well, especially when people are charging like $350 a lesson, and then people are like, okay, well, maybe I'll learn it in the next lesson. Anyway, so keep those things in mind. This can be a slow process. It was for me. Now, continuing to go down why this is difficult. This is, as you probably already know from me and maybe seeing some of my other videos, this is accessing musculature in the throat that we almost never really get acquainted with using. For me, growing up in a family that made stupid voices and stuff all the time, and accents and all this, I have a family that is very silly with those types of things. And God bless them for that, because I love it. When I finally figured out how to make some of these mixed sounds, it was accessing sounds in my voice that I really had never used. And if you're going to be clever and be like, actually, we use these muscles when we cry as a child. You can do that if you want. But as a fucking adult, I never made these sounds before. So when I did, it was very, very odd. And it didn't feel the way I thought it was going to feel. It didn't sound the way I thought it was going to sound. And it was very hard to know. But the main thing, as I've tried to say in a bunch of videos, is that I was able to make a sound that was connecting both of my voices. Not good, not well, but I was able to make this sound, so I kind of knew, oh, I'm on to something here. And then months and months of practicing and figuring out all these different subtleties and stuff, where, the components of how to put these things together were key. Where did I learn my stuff from? I learned my stuff from something called Singing Success, for the most part. If you ever remember that, way back in the day. That was probably about 15 years ago, by a person named Brett Manning. He was teaching mastering mix and all that kind of stuff. And he was really, really excellent at it. There was pieces that I found that might have been missing or whatever, but that's going to be everybody's case everywhere with any information that they read or whatnot. But it was definitely something that helped me. But once again, yeah, I didn't know I was there. It's very counterintuitive. So I want to kind of get you into some other mindsets to go about this so that you continue to understand it while you go down this rabbit hole. So if everything intuitively that you're trying to do is wrong, then what are you supposed to do? Well, it's actually pretty much night and day. The thing that you're doing, where you're starting to build up and start to pull up pressure when you're building up in your chest. All this stuff. Neck going out this way. These muscles increasing and getting heavier and trying to put themselves into the sound. All of those things, knowing now as I'm saying this, are the opposite of what needs to happen. The opposite of what needs to happen is you need to calm the energy down everywhere, and you need to bring your volume down, because essentially we're going to take all that energy that's going this direction and we're going to start to bring it in this way. No, that does not mean choke yourself off and go, like this. It means literally, it means back off the pressure. So if you keep finding yourself hitting up, the same wave keeps hitting you, I want you to try to do things like vocal fry, which you'll see a video that I made where we're going, I've talked about this many times. We're paying attention to this resonance elevator that's moving up and down in the body like this. If you cannot feel that resonance being able to move up into the head and back down, then you're doing something wrong where you're getting stuck somewhere. The elevator is getting stuck. You can kind of think about it like a tube being filled with water or some kind of a liquid of some sort like that, where we're letting it fill up and it's going to keep moving up or down. Eventually, we can project that in different ways in terms of almost like a gradient where certain pressures are somewhere and the color is a little bit faded this way, or certain pressures. I don't want to get too weird and cryptic on you, but anyway, think about it like water. Is that water allowed to rise, or is it starting to build somewhere and starting to kind of bloat, in so to speak, in water terms? As I make that sound, my jaw is loose, everything's kind of loose here, and the sound is the water tubes is getting smaller. So you can tell that I'm backing off the pressure and it's getting smaller. This is another important factor to why you're having trouble or why you're having trouble finding these things or whatnot too. And it's very logic and it's very simple, very logical, I should say. A higher voice is a smaller voice. So any thought that you have where the higher you go, the more badass it's going to be or whatever is obviously logically wrong. If you hear it that way, it is an illusion, or it's something somebody's doing and it's the sound of a compressed voice, so it sounds more like something that's compressed like a fucking firework that's getting ready to blow up. So in that case, it might sound more badass, but it's actually smaller, it's actually tinier, whatever. A smaller voice, a higher voice is smaller, a lower voice is larger. Simple logic. A mouse that's going making tiny mouse noises, that was horrible. Sorry everybody, I should quit my entire career now. A mouse or some smaller creature has smaller vocal cords, has a smaller voice. It's making a higher pitch than somewhere. Logically, it should make sense. So, when you're going higher, any instinct that you have to pull up and get louder or whatever should all of a sudden now, it should be very understood that is not going to work. Ever, not always, other analogies and words, things that work. Understand? So we need to learn how to back off and make our voice smaller. Some people are going to do that with compression and trying to stretch and strain and things like that. And some of that you'll get into, and it might work for you and it might not. But at first, just recognize that your voice needs to back the fuck down. It needs to calm down, and you need to calm down all these energies. Recognize the pattern, the muscular pattern as you raise, and you go from something very relaxed, when in doubt, use speaking voice. Don't use some or anything crazy, weird, or stylistic. As I rise, recognize what starts to kick in. I'm pretty sure that whatever you feel kick in, if you don't know how to mix yet, is probably going to be something that shouldn't kick in. And I'll do it the wrong way. So the second I started doing that, I started to feel this kick in. I started to feel this kick in. I started to pull my neck out this way. I started to feel my chest rise because my body was starting to acclimate to try to keep my vocal cords together. Essentially, your body is recognizing the pressure. It's trying to counteract that pressure, and everything's starting to try to compress and bear down to keep those little tiny rubber band vocal cords together. The other direction that we're going when it comes to mix is that we're stretching a different direction. So instead of your larynx rising and going up like this, and everything trying to be like, we got this, we're stretching down this way. That's why it sounds different. That's why it's easier. That's why it's, the thing that everybody's lusting after, right? So, as we've done plenty of times here, one of the main things that you should be practicing, especially with vocal fry or whatnot, is, just can't seem to get this piano out any farther, can I? Is sirens. And it doesn't need to be perfected with, fifths or octaves. You can sit down on a piano or a guitar or whatever and practice these things, just like that. But it doesn't really matter. Teaching yourself with something as simple as M's, lip bubbles, tongue trills, something like that. In one of my last videos, I did vocal fry, so we'll go there really quick. One of the great things about vocal fry is that I'm really able to feel that movement that I need, that resonance movement. That's not a cute thing I keep mentioning because it's a neat visualization exercise. It's really happening. The voice, that resonance, that pressure, that tension wants to move, and you will feel it move as you get better at this. So that's me going over my bridge. You should be probably close to there too if you're a baritone. Don't trick yourself and stay in head voice when you get up here. Am I doing it? No, Mickey, you're not doing it. When in doubt, go back to chest voice. Go back to speaking voice. One more. You can take those with octaves. Now, one of the missing pieces that a lot of people have to mixed voice too is they're very used to experiencing chest voice and head voice. And then they're like, okay, I need to find this perfect sound in the middle. I'm going to make a whole video right after this one about what that piece is. And that piece is pharyngeal. It's nasal. And people have trouble understanding that too, or they have trouble putting their voice there. So we're going to talk about that at more length. And of course, I'm always talking more about this stuff and trying to share more of these, in-depth lessons and all those types of things over on Patreon if you want to join me over there. That's also always an ad-free experience because these ads and these pop-up skip things are a pain in the ass for all of us and will probably be the bane of our existence. So, now, let's do a couple more exercises so you can try to follow along here. We were just doing slides there. I was telling you could do this with M's. Training yourself to make that sound I'm making doesn't mean that you're going to perfectly develop mix, but what it does is it starts to tap into that instinct and that muscular side of you that's telling you, okay, when I go higher, I train myself to calm the energy or to quiet down and back off the energy. Does that mean that your vocal cords come apart? For me to make that sound right now, you should see that my face and everything on a muscular level is once again changing. That's the right way. Once again, if you were to hold a mirror in front of yourself and make that sound, I'm becoming tense, oddly tense, to make a chest to falsetto transition there. Something is actually happening on a physical level that's pulling tension in, that's then causing me to flip or have more of a dynamic kind of thing like that. So do you feel that when you do it? Are you sitting here following along going, you should probably feel that right about here. That's where my pull is trying to happen, and then it breaks apart. So once again, we're not doing that either. We're trying to consistently make a sound where we're getting the hell out of the way. Like I mentioned before, there's plenty of different scales, and there's plenty of different ways we can go about this. I may have already talked too much, but we'll take another one really quick to transition to the next video I'm going to do after this, which is talking about that nasality. Get in the habit of practicing and recognizing that the middle resonator between chest voice and head voice is the nose, is nasality. So trying to pull and get that tension away from here, one of the most important catalysts to do that is recognizing this arena, this whole thing up here that we have to deal with. Some people might speak a little bit more with nasality and you can't really tell. People aren't trained, and one of the cool things about singing is that the more you do it in your voice, the more you'll start to hear it in other people's voices. I don't want to say too much because, like I said, I'm going to do this in the next video. But to get from here, to here, we got to go through here. So that's probably one of the main things that you're having trouble with as well, is that you want to sound really good in chest, and then you want to sound really good up here, but you have no idea that this whole other thing needs to happen. This sheds a bunch of the weight of here by moving this to here. Another part of this is keeping the head down. Learning to relax and keep your head down. The sound is traveling upwards. So it's not building tension like this, where you're starting to fall out of the face. Your placement is moving backwards. So let's take a quick thing. Same thing, we'll just do sirens, but we'll do them with nasality. So you can try to do it with EH, maybe UNG, and once again, I'm going to follow this up and make a video after this. We'll do it with UNG. What do I mean by that? I mean, I mean like, ha-ha, French. Should be totally nasal. Pay attention to my physical body again. Nothing's happening. If you're getting louder, if you feel yourself getting louder, the more you approach your bridge, obviously you're going to flip and it's not going to work. Because you need to get quieter instead. Now, one more. yawning into the sound. Instead of your larynx raising and the pressure building in here, we're gonna neutralize that by moving the larynx down instead. So some people have success with this. Everybody's different. Give me a yawn into the sound. So we're gonna focus on O. It's gonna eventually turn into oo on the top, but we're gonna go O and we're gonna yawn. So if you watch my larynx, I can just fake yawn. Some of my students can't do this, but if you can yawn, fake yawn, and get that larynx to drop, notice that tilting action, that feeling. It feels like your throat is going like this. What it's doing is it's tilting itself downwards like this. That tilt becomes very important as we sing high, and as we learn to sing high, because I should also mention that mix happens way before your bridge. You don't get close to your bridge with tension and then go, oh yeah, I got to mix. No, when you start to learn how to mix, you start to pay attention to some of the sensations that happen, and then you start to do those as you get closer to your bridge, thereby mixing the resonances. So as I go, oh, oh, there I'm mixing. It's a little bit more forced open, but we'll start right here. I'm just yawning into the sound, and I'm paying attention to this tilting mechanism that happens when I yawn. So instead, I'm forcing my larynx down, not with much pressure or anything, but I'm forcing that yawn sound in there so that I'm counterbalancing that habitual tendency to want to go and pull up. Oh, oh. So I'm going to O on the top, or oo on the top. Oh, oh. Oh, 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 oh. Notice how relaxed my jaw is again. I'm really focusing on making that nice roundness. Oh, if I go, oh, you probably get a lot of that sound with a lot of people doing this. You can hear the difference right away. Oh, which is fine. And remember, I started out doing these things too. This is not a night and day thing. There was no one video or exercise that I heard and was like, no, I got this. Give me a microphone. I'm going to sing all the 80s music that ever existed. It takes time. Oh, 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 oh. All right. Thanks, everybody. We're going to talk about nasality next.